How can the advanced ITIL practices help IT professionals bridge the gap between the IT and business goals?
Yeah, great question. So in the last webinar, we talked about the fundamentals of IT service management, all the basic things that we do, like incident response and service desk tickets, and being able to do field services work and things like that. When we start talking about the advanced ITIL practices, we start talking about going to the next level, right? So ITIL Foundation is the first certification. It kind of gives you a good overview, so everybody's speaking the same language, and we can communicate and collaborate really well. The biggest challenge though that we have is, ITIL has 34 different practices. So there's a lot of different things we can do with ITIL, including project management. We can do our information assurance, which is cybersecurity. We have problem management, event management, all these different things, right? And then on top of that, we have these advanced practices like high velocity IT and driving stakeholder value and things like that. So, the biggest thing that I always think about when I talk about these advanced idle practices and why it's beneficial to an organization is being able to align our IT services with our business objectives. Back in the day, you mentioned I used to have a lot of experience doing this in the real world. For 20 years, I worked in and around IT service management and cybersecurity. And multiple times in my career, I was an IT director for very large organizations. My last position before I went, full time with Dion Training was I was the IT director for the U.S. Navy's networks across all of Europe, which was 7 different countries. Um, you know, tens of thousands of end users, lots of server rooms, lots of data centers spread across an entire geographic expansion area. Previous to that, I had also worked doing the same thing in the Middle East. So spent a lot of time in Dubai, a lot of time in Bahrain and other countries in that area. And it was a very similar thing where 10, 20, 30,000 users uh, were working on our services. And one of the things I had to remind my technicians all the time is that we don't do IT for the sake of IT. Now, what I mean by that is, I'd have people come in and go, my job would be great if it wasn't for these customers with all their problems. And I'm like, yeah, but if we didn't have customers with problems, we wouldn't need you and you wouldn't have a job. So, it's kind of a double-edged sword there, right? It's like, oh man, I wish these customers weren't around. I'm like, well, you actually don't, because then you wouldn't have a job. But by aligning our IT services with the business objectives, we can make sure we understand what the business is doing and we're doing IT to support that business. And this is going to be different depending on what organization you're in. For example, at Dion Training, we are a training company. That's what our mission is. Now, do we use IT to do that? Sure. We use IT all the time. We have a whole recording studio. We've got podcast studios. We've got websites. We've got learning management systems. We have live streams like this, right? All these things require IT. But our IT folks aren't doing IT just for us to do IT. They're doing IT so that I can get on this live stream and talk to you today. Or they're doing IT so that we can do video editing and put those videos out so you can learn from them. They're doing IT so we can build a practice exam system so that we can then give you better education, right? If I work at a real estate brokerage, they don't really care about IT except in the fact that it helps them sell houses. If you work for Amazon and you're part of their, logistical shipping unit, they use a ton of IT, but it's not because they need to do IT. It's because they need to make sure that can of soda gets from their warehouse to my house when I order it. And that's what IT is doing. It's enabling that business objective. So that's one of the things I think about when we talk about ITIL practices and bridging the gap. We already talked about the fact that it can improve communication and collaboration because we're now all speaking the same language. We understand what those 34 practices are. We understand what the 4 dimensions are. We understand the service value chain and the service value system. All that stuff we cover in ITIL Foundation. But now when we go up to the advanced levels, like create, deliver, and support, drive stakeholder value, high velocity IT, strategic leader, managing professional, and others, we start working at this business level. And so we have to move ourselves out of IT and into this business operations space and why we do IT to be able to do that. We're also going to be able to enable faster and more agile decision making as we go. We're driving business value and we're enhancing our governance and risk management because we now understand why are we doing IT and how does it align to support the organization. So that's kind of how I look at this when we start talking about, how do we bridge this gap between the IT and business goals and using these idle practices to do it is we are now speaking the language of business, but using IT to support it.
Yeah, I love that. I'll quickly put in my 2 cents. Just being here for 4.5 years, a lot of the lingo uh, that was being used when I joined Dion Training was completely a foreign language to me. So being able to apply what I've learned over the several years I've been here, it's much easier to communicate with the IT folks here as well. So it's definitely helpful to be able to speak that same language.